Again, this is being recorded. So going alphabetically by last name, let's begin with Andrew Daly and your statement, please.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear.
Ryan's interpreting.
Yes, you sound great.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me on this discussion here. My name is Andrew Daly, and I'm currently the Associate Director for the Athletic Director for Missouri School for the Deaf. And I've been a part of being a part of the educational system has exposed me to a lot of things that I want to change because I want to make things better for my students and have the opportunities to provide them with experiences that I had back when I was at a big school. But I wasn't able to do that because of a lot of the different issues related to financing and money. And it's very restrictive of their activities. So separate from the educational system that I've experienced, my daily life here in Missouri, I see a lot of things like prices going up. People are not able to afford things that they need. We are not getting paid enough as school employees. These are challenges that I want to address and push for change, better pay for everyone. Because from what I've been reading and researching, there's a lot of math to do on my part, obviously. And if companies actually pay their workers better, we would be able to stimulate the economy better as well. Provide a better, higher standard of living. Thank you very much.
Bethany?
Hi, Muleskinners, and hi, Andrew. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you running for office. It takes a lot of courage. And I just want to say it's really nice to have this free and open debate. I greatly appreciate your time here today, Muleskinners. And so I'll tell you a little bit about myself. To those of you guys who don't know me, my name is Bethany Mann. I grew up in Forestell, Missouri, homeschooled, and I wound up finding my salvation through public education. I went to a community college, got a very good chemistry degree from the University of Illinois in Springfield. And I started my career as an intern at the EPA, testing our groundwater and soil samples for environmental pollutants that big industrial corporate polluters had dumped into our air and soil. I am qualified for this position because of my experience in infrastructure, manufacturing, and agricultural processing. And I'm running for office because I believe that our water should be lead-free and free of contaminants like forever chemicals. I believe that our students should be fully supported from pre-K to secondary education. And we do need to deal with issues of inflation. I'm a mom with toddlers, and we see higher prices everywhere. At the grocery store to the gas pump. And we've seen some ease up from inflation, but there's still so much more work to do to support working families. I believe in things like equal and fair bargaining rights for workers and farmers. And ultimately, my platform is about supporting the American worker through higher wages and holding corporations accountable for not only not paying their fair share in taxes, but also finding fun loopholes that they can use to pollute and not pay their fair share and restrict access to American workers. So I will ask for your vote on August the 6th and November the 5th. And I greatly appreciate your time today. I'm really looking forward to your questions. So I'm ready to jump right in.
Okay. Do we have a question? Herb, you usually have a question. Can you start us off here? You need to unmute yourself.
Don't know how good I am anymore at answering questions. I
I can throw them out there. I hope that both of you paid attention to the Supreme Court's rulings rolled out this morning. One involving the environment and regulation, and the other the ruling relating to the insurgents who got into the Capitol January 6th. Do you have any reactions to those two rulings this morning?
And let's start with Bethany.
Sure. So I am a shameless EPA promoter because they are one part of our government. They're one of our government agencies that actually brings in revenue for the government by busting up corporate polluters. And I don't know if you guys knew the history of how the EPA came to be. And it's because there was a river in Ohio that had so much chemicals that were dumped into it that it literally caught on fire. And so to protect our domestic security, the EPA was founded so that the government could have some sort of agency and power to be able to curb polluters to protect our nation's land and seas. So, decisions from the Supreme Court, unfortunately, have weakened environmental protections, not just for small to medium-sized water systems, but also larger as well. I think it leads to more of an approach of corporatizing our water by allowing big corporations to take over private municipalities. We have started to see that here in Missouri, and we'll start to see that more as climate issues related to climate change, like drought, pushes manufacturing and other types of critical infrastructure further into areas that have water. Missouri, we have a lot of water. We have a lot of capacity for added manufacturing, and we do not want corporations to control that supply. So I feel like this Supreme Court decision makes it easier for corporations to own our land and our sea instead of Americans having the right to drink clean water and to breathe clean air. In regards to the insurrectionists, it makes it a little harder for the Department of Justice to prosecute its case. However, what we saw on January 6th were just not peaceful patriots showing up at the Capitol for nice tours. We had Americans were killed, law enforcement were killed, there was property damage, and oh, that's a nice little reminder. And there was property damage, and ultimately our congressional the congressional duty to certify the election was delayed because of that. I mean, I would say treason. So I think that I support my time's up. I'll let you guys go ahead. Sorry, Andrew, go ahead.
Okay. Andrew?
Thank you so much. So based on what I've read about the Supreme Court's ruling this morning on the January 6th situation, I don't think it's appropriate. The certification of the election is protected in the Constitution. And for people to just show up and knock on our Capitol door and not get in trouble for that, it doesn't sit well with me. I think that we should prosecute them to the fullest extent. Because if we do not punish them, you give people who are upset with the election process the opportunity to do that again. And they will expect to get off scot-free. So I'm really not happy with that court ruling by the Supreme Court.
Thank you. Next question is from Alice. Alice, do you have a question?
You're muted, Alice.
Well, let's go to a question from the chat. Peter asks, you think the president should continue after last night, or would you like our party to find some method of selecting a younger candidate? And we'll start with Andrea this time. Andrew.
After discussing the debate last night and watching it, it was really hard for me to watch it. Because President Biden, he was having a hard time getting his point through and speaking. And me as a deaf person, I can see him struggling to bring out his thoughts and his talking points. And it was really frustrating for me to watch that, because ex-President Trump was avoiding and deflecting the question and not answering the questions fully. He always ended his answers with some random point that did not even relate to the question at all, which was really frustrating to see that. And a lot of people on social media and in the newspapers were talking about how President Trump just wiped the floor with President Biden. But again, I hope people can see that ex-President Trump for who he is, and he is a liar. He is a convict, and he still is facing a lot of charges in court that are still in process. And unfortunately, I don't think there's any way to salvage this with President Biden. I just hope that he can come back stronger for the second debate. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bethany?
Yeah, so I watched the debate along with everybody else, and I was disappointed by what I felt was a lack to properly and clearly communicate and enunciate his policy positions early on in the debate. I thought that it got better as time went on. And I have to tell you, even with the shortcomings, I am still with Joe. He has been a long-standing servant of our country. He is a strong American patriot. He is good at administration. He has put smart people in critical roles throughout our government, and he's been able to push forward an agenda that includes money for science and infrastructure, for capping prescription drugs at $35 a bottle of insulin. And I think that his policies and his actions speak for himself and his ability to lead. I think we shouldn't focus so much on the words in an early debate on CNN. My husband's a musician, and he commented on how hard it can be to get your point across if you're having issues with your microphone or the sound earlier in the set. So I think that it's similar to that. I believe that we do have a very strong candidate in Kamala Harris as a second in command, and I fully expect him to be able to serve not just this term, but the next one should he choose to. So I stand with Joe, and I support his policies. And I have to say, Donald Trump did dodge a lot of questions, but he did answer a lot of them very honestly. So when people asked if he would accept the terms of Russia in the war with Crimea, he absolutely avoided that. And instead spent a good part of his time parroting Putin's agenda. So if the United States is going to capitulate to Russia, we're looking at American troops overseas in Europe when NATO invokes Article 5, when Putin expands into other European countries. So I believe that for our own international security, that there really is no choice. We stand aligned with the President of the United States, and we do not capitulate to Russian puppets.
Thank you. Next question, Alice, can you ask your question now? You'll need to unmute yourself. Jeez.
Yeah, I sent her a private chat and she didn't answer that. So I think maybe
She's probably away from her screen.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay, let me ask you a question then. Assuming you win the primary, and I realize your strategy is different now than it will be after August. What are you going to do to win the seat? I mean, it's a seat that I think it's probably had Democratic representatives. The area, a lot of it has in the past, but pretty far in the past. And what's your strategy? How are you going to campaign? How are you going to reach people with Democratic ideas, with your ideas around the district? We'll start with Bethany.
Sure, that's a really wonderful question. The third is a congressional seat that historically has been Democratic more often than not in recent memories. It lost due to some gerrymandering several years ago, and there was more gerrymandering that happened that made the seat harder to win this time, right? So I think that my road to victory really is following that band along Highway 70 and reaching out to independent voters. I have been working extensively with down ballot candidates from St. Charles out to Boone County, down to Miller County, and Crawford County. And so we are pushing hard to talk to independent voters. We are also running hard on the issue of women's rights and how wrong government overreach is in our healthcare. With Missouri's for Constitutional Freedom and other groups gathering signatures for the petition process to put abortion on the ballot in November. There was one time in St. Peters, Missouri, which is where I will soon live. They had 45 people collecting signatures in what was an area that went to Trump by 26 points. So we are seeing some movement, especially on the issue of women's rights and healthcare access. And we believe that we found the 80,000 votes to win through the I-70 corridor.
And Andrew?
So my strategy, so if I was to win the primary seat, would be to go out in person and meet people and get my message across. Because right now, it's really hard for me because as a deaf person, I have to hire an interpreter to go with me. And my campaign is kind of steamrolled itself because I have to like make videos and push out on different social media platforms. I don't really ask for donations because I don't believe in collecting money from the constituents. I know that a lot of political people do collect millions and millions of dollars for their campaigns and their strategies, but I really don't believe in that because if your ideas and your messages are good enough and they represent your constituents well, then I feel like the constituents will vote for me. So my philosophy, that's my philosophy for my political campaign.
Thank you. I guess I've got another question from her.
I'd like to speak to both of you as if you'd already won the primary and the election. For many years, I taught international relations and American foreign policy at the university. And it was my custom to bring in members of Congress, if I could, for a session over the course of the semester. And they frequently responded, even if their interests were primarily in domestic affairs, as most congresspersons from here are. When you are elected, each of you, although you can't be at once, what changes, if any, would you like to encourage in current American foreign policy to alter it, to more emphasize it, or to de-emphasize it?
Thank you. And we'll start with Andrew this time.
Related with foreign policy, number one, we have to protect our country. We are number one, number two, and number three in size of military because our country is the country that other countries want to be. So continuing on the topic of federal policy with Russia, I believe Russia is a threat to our democracy. And I would give our support to the Ukraine and continue to support the Ukraine in their arms, because right now, Russia is a danger to our country and they have to be stopped at all costs. And I really appreciate that the Ukraine got the opportunity to join NATO. And has been done well with Finland and Sweden. And that will send a message to Russia that we are not to be trifled with.
Thank you, Bethany.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful question. I very, like Andrew, I very much believe that for our foreign policy, we should be very much supportive of an expanding NATO and increasing spending. And we should lead through diplomacy, not necessarily through our military might, but diplomatic relations. One great way to be a diplomat is to be a scientist, and scientists serve all of American scientists serve all across the globe in efforts for to expand diplomacy and democracy. I also think that we need to lead by example, especially when it comes to issues related to human rights. I want to be very clear that these policies that we have in Missouri of forced birth, they have international implication for women and girls and other workers across the globe. What we do in our business markets and in our policies here in America set the stage for how people are treated in the rest of the world in 10, 15, 20 years from now. And we need to be very conscious of the example that we set with our domestic policy, knowing that that's going to export to the rest of the world. I do believe in increasing funding for our diplomatic programs as part of spending in our defense budget. And yes, we should stand firmly with our allies to help strengthen NATO and create a world where we're not caught in violent power struggles with nuclear weapons. I think that's a future that we can all avoid, and that by standing firm with our allies, we can support democracy across the globe so that other countries are able to exercise the same freedoms that we enjoy and sometimes take for granted here at home.
Thank you. Alice, do you have a question?
Yes, sorry, my iPad was frozen. I would like more comment on the Supreme Court decision about immunity and how that they believe that could relate to Trump's immunity status from January 6th and that legal case. And secondly, if you were elected as a Democrat, how would you work to make changes in our Supreme Court and the thing that we're stuck in for decades if there aren't changes? And why did Biden say he might appoint 2 more people in the next session? They're all pretty young. Thank you.
Bethany?
Sure. So I think as far as presidential immunity goes and what the Supreme Court's going to decide, like we should be really realistic. The fact that President Trump picked the Supreme Court justices that he did to sit on the bench to do exactly what they're doing right now, which is to deregulate, give as much bailouts and leeway to corporations to sack us for our natural resources, and then to take away our rights so that we can't do anything about it. So I fully expect that the Supreme Court's going to come back with a ruling that seems so very backwards if we're looking at the arc of American history, to give an individual or an individual's family or an individual and his friends immunity to commit whatever crimes they want, even if it's attacking law enforcement, even if it's staging a coup that was unsuccessful at our U.S. Capitol. I think that we're living in some unprecedented times. One way that we can fight against that is to be involved in making sure that Democrats get elected up and down the ballot, including in the White House. So if you're looking at certain Supreme Court justices who might be retiring, those seats, it's expected that some of the older justices, even though it is a pretty young bench, some of them will step away, like Clarence Thomas will step away so that Trump can put in a younger gun. I think you kind of see some posturing among Missouri's own attorney generals and senators to fill that role. And it sets up a police state for fascism that all of us should be very much concerned by. I think the solution is to expand the Supreme Court and make sure that we go back to a separation of powers where no one person is above the law.
Thank you. Andrew, same question about the Supreme Court.
So related with presidential immunity, I do not think that should be allowed for a president to do whatever he wants while in office. And related to packing the Supreme Court, I want to go back about 10 or 12 years ago when there was an available Supreme Court seat and President Obama wanted to put in a Democrat to fill that available seat. But Mitch McConnell said, no, it is too soon. We all know what happened after that. When President Trump became president, he started to fill the Supreme Court seat with all of his friends. And I also want to spotlight the other Supreme Court justices that allowed for that to happen, for that political thing to happen, to accept bribery without any punishments. That should not be allowed. Our party is saying that we are playing at two knives. We need to be more aggressive with our politics and with our political agenda. We cannot start to have feelings for Republican people because they would not do the same for us. We have to be aggressive in our political agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. Let me ask the question that Mr. Trump would not answer last night. With regard to the crisis of climate change and global warming, what policies would you support, and how would you balance the need to reduce our emissions against the possibility that some of that may result in higher prices? And Andrew.
Related to climate change, and the fact that President Trump would not even answer that question says a lot. Because he has been bought and paid by the big oil corporations. That's why he refused to answer the question. And I think to face climate change, we really need to push for green power, push for solar power and farming and agriculture, and have better alternative fuel sources. We have to provide a lot of support to our wonderful scientists out there and our researchers to find ways to make those changes happen. We also have to push for lower costs, lower taxes for everyday citizens to use solar power on their homes, because right now it's too expensive to put solar power in your home. It costs $20,000 to $30,000 and you would not break even. Maybe not until 5 years later. That's not really a good way to proceed with that. So we need to find more cost-effective ways to provide incentives for the American people to switch to solar and green power and electric in their homes, everything within that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's see, Bethany.
Yeah, I believe that climate change is real and we must take serious action. We see the impacts of climate change here in Missouri, and we can talk about it in ways that connect with regular voters. The farmers see droughts. We see floods all over the state, and we see these warm temperatures. I can't tell you how many different groups I'm in on Facebook where they talk about my air conditioning went out. I can't afford the cost of energy. We need to be responsible for the messaging that talks about the economic implications of climate change and the solutions that we can offer to make things better. I think we can do things like on the manufacturing side, we can set carbon budgets and allow manufacturers to do some carbon budgeting. We should incentivize companies who are taking a greener approach to manufacturing and helping them also to build up some of their aging infrastructure that causes some of those problems. We also need to look at, and Andrew brought this up also, is expanded energy options. So we're not just talking about, just talking about moving away from coal, but there are so many different things that we can use. We have nuclear power that is unique to our district that powers 25% of our state. It uses a lot of water though, but I don't believe that we should rely on really one solution. I have experience working in ethanol and water infrastructure, and there are very smart things that we can do to improve our infrastructure to save money on a large scale and not just a small scale to solve the climate crisis. We also need to have our allies on board and also corporations to make sure that they understand the value and the economics of being more sustainable. And I think that this can be done.
Kathy, question?
Yes. What are your thoughts about solutions or things that could be done to tweak our immigration system, which has been broken for a long time, but is going to even probably have more stresses due to migration that's occurring worldwide? What things do you think you could put forward as a new congressperson?
Okay, I'll start with Bethany.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And what's interesting about that is immigration is also a function of climate change. As resources become scarce in other parts of the world, that is moving migrations of people towards areas that have natural resources. So I think the president actually had a really good response on this. I'll hope to articulate that a little better. I think one of the ways that we can deal with the immigration crisis is actually to upgrade our technology infrastructure. So one of the big concerns that people have is, drugs that come across the border. Well, now we have technology that can use certain technologies to scan shipments that are coming in through any of our ports, not just at the border, to catch and detect fentanyl, methamphetamines, and other types of drugs that come here illegally. I also want to go back and just remind everybody what the immigration policy was of the guy before. He was separating children and mothers from families, and it was a cruel and inhumane approach to handling immigration. I think that we need to respect the humanity of the folks who are coming to our country to secure a better life for themselves. I think that we need to properly fund our judges, our immigration judges, and make sure that they have updated technology to quickly process folks who want to come into our country for a better future. I also think that we have a widespread issue, or we have a widespread need for workers here in this country who are here legally. And so I think the executive action by the Biden administration to reject the visas of corporations and public officials who use migrant labor illegally, I think those visas should be revoked. And I also think that those who want to come into our country and work can also help us rebuild our country here at home by creating a job and a union apprenticeship for folks who come across the border, so that they can help build our roads, upgrade our water infrastructure, and really participate in the American dream and rebuild America for all of us.
Thank you. Andrew, same question about immigration.
This is a very sticky topic for me because I do have empathy for the people who want to come to America and live out their American dream. But at the same time, we have to protect our citizens who were born here, who work hard, and they feel threatened by undocumented people who are coming into the country and are willing to work for lower paying jobs And that's taking away jobs and money from the daily American citizen. I also want to comment on last night's debate. President Trump called undocumented people killers and murderers, and I was not happy with that statement. Because what I said before, there are extreme cases, yes, but most of the people who are coming to America just want to live out their American dream. And we have to figure out a better way 3,000 Border Patrol people in Mexico and investing all that money. We need to invest that money in better tech, yeah. But now we need to elevate with the increase of AI use. We can capitalize on that type of technology with AI that could speed up the process of immigration and help undocumented people by leading the way for them to come into the country and they can live out as a law-abiding citizen of this great nation of ours.
Thank you. Let me ask another question. You've probably been listening to each other for quite a while now at candidate forums and et cetera. What do each of you bring that you don't think your opponent does, or where do you feel like you have a real disagreement in terms of policies and viewpoint from your primary opponent? Let's start with Andrew.
Since we are both in the Democratic Party, there's not a lot of things that I disagree with Bethany on, specific points, because I do believe in full human rights for everybody. I believe in women's rights to have abortions, because I am not a woman and I will never understand what they go through. And so I support their rights to their own body, to make the choices for their own body. What I bring to the table, I consider myself an off-track person. I think everyone wants to develop a better country for everyone else, develop better education for everyone. And the fact that teachers are the backbone foundation of our nation and they're getting paid $20,000 to $30,000 a year, that is not sustainable for them. Right now, we are experiencing a teacher shortage because they are not getting paid enough. And parents are using them as daycare. And it's not how it should be. We need to find a better way to educate our children. I think that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you. And Bethany?
Hi, I'm gonna just kind of maybe parrot a little bit of what Andrew said. We don't have a whole lot of disagreements on things. We do very much align with a lot of the same values. I think really the only difference between the two of us is I just have a lot more experience in some of the initiatives that I want to bring forth. So making sure that our water is clean. I sit on the board of the Kansas Laboratory Education Association. I'm already working with multiple states on educating a water infrastructure workforce. So I work with government agencies. I know how to communicate with stakeholders in the private industry. It really is just more of an experience issue versus issues that we may not agree on. In fact, after the primary last year, Andrew was gracious and he endorsed me after he lost. And after the primary, I'm going to reach out to him to ask him to join me, because I think that his outlooks and perspective on folks with disabilities are really important. We're entering an election where we have a president and a presidential party who is running on a platform of getting rid of Social Security and Medicare, which are things that folks with disabilities greatly need to live out their lives. We also need to do things like address the housing crisis, which impacts all of us here in this state, from young moms and also folks with disabilities. So I think that Andrew's doing a great job running. I think he's giving a lot of hope to those kids out in Fulton who desperately need awareness, and they need that hope. I think that's important work. Really, the only difference is we're just at different parts of our career, and I think I can get more done.
Thank you. I guess I've got another question from Herb.
And accustomed as I am to asking questions. Rural and small town America are in trouble across much of America. Some good things have been done in the first Biden administration. Let's go beyond that. What would you, as a member of Congress, wish to promote, recommend, or support further to improve problems of low education, low income, low wealth, low life expectancy, 6 years less than metropolitan areas, across rural and small town America?
Okay, I'll start this time with Bethany.
Yeah, I think that's a really smart perspective, is that rural and small towns really do need resources from the federal government. I think one of the critical issues in Missouri's 3rd Congressional is access to clean water that's lead-free. That impacts our educational system, because kids that are exposed to lead from 0 to 5 years old, they experience developmental delays and health outcomes. Chemicals like forever chemicals, which is going to be an emerging topic you guys are going to hear more and more about. These are man-made, corporation-made chemicals that are in all of our water supply. It contaminates military bases, places where there are airports, and the chemicals have gotten into the groundwater. And the pervasive use of PFAS chemicals are used in consumer goods that pollute our water supplies. So I think one easy nonpartisan way that we can provide resources for rural communities is we can update our water infrastructure. This will create good union jobs, which will raise wages and provide more economic stability to folks who live in these smaller towns, whether you're dealing with radioactive contamination over in Weldon Springs, or the high sulfur content down in Bell, or you're just dealing with CAFO waste in a watershed. Improving water infrastructure is a great way we can bring folks together. Another thing that I would say is we need to fully and equitably support our public schools and make sure that these voucher programs are a thing of the past. Public money should go to public schools, period. And I believe that we can do smart things like support our students from pre-K all the way to secondary schooling. And this means investing in a program where we make universal pre-K a reality. And we can do that with Bethany Mann in Congress and Crystal Quaid in the governor's mansion. I can fight for funds that will end up in the governor's desk, that they will properly be allocated to smaller towns, so that folks in our heartland can actually see the government doing good work for them.
Thank you. Andrew, same question about helping the rural part of the district.
I want to ask Herb if you could please clarify your question so I could hear it right. Can you repeat your question?
Question is, on top of whatever good is being done currently by the Biden administration, what, as a member of Congress, would you like to initiate or promote additionally to help the problems of poverty, health, economy generally, educational attainment, and all the other myriad problems of small town and rural America today from the federal level?
Thank you so much for clarifying that. So rural towns actually run our country because we need their food. We need their agriculture, their corn, their wheat. We need all of that to support our people. I just read an article that a few red states have denied federal funding for free lunches to kids in schools. And I think states should not be able to have the ability to deny free lunches to kids. We should force those schools to accept the funding from the federal to give free lunches to students in those schools, because those kids are not getting lunches. And when they're not getting fed in their daily lives, that will have effects on their education, and that will then come and impact their home environment, adding more stress to their parents, trying to find ways to feed their children. So it's really tough for me to hear about that. And I agree with Bethany that farming in rural counties, they should have access to clean water because, of course, we all need water to survive. And with chemicals that are overflowing and permeating into our water supply, into manufacturing, into the schools and the lakes and all that, into the groundwater, we really need to expose people on these topics and put restrictions onto what they can manufacture and implement harsher penalties and restrictions so that our rural counties can continue to persevere and do better. Because if they can do better, then we will all do better together.
Thank you. Final question from Pam.
Yes. As a senior, I have some concern about the future of Social Security unless some changes are made to its funding. I understand that the demographics of the population in the United States is growing older, and so there are less people to pay into Social Security. So how would you solve that problem in the future to increase the funding for Social Security?
Okay, we'll start with Andrew.
It's a very good question. Because a lot of senior citizens are retiring and a lot of them are not able to work. And they need that Social Security funding to live. And the fact that our country is getting older means less money in the system. It's really hard to face that. And we cannot just ask daily Americans for more money to increase the Social Security. We have to find a better financial infrastructure to fund our senior citizens and support them. We need to find ways, maybe import tax can be increased on our daily spending as well. That will go to support our senior citizens.
And Bethany, question on Social Security.
That's a really great question. It's an important one, especially as we're dealing with the post-COVID reality where more and more people are disabled and they rely on that income too. It's not just seniors who depend on Social Security. It's a lot of other folks too. So I think one smart way to finance it, and President Biden mentioned this last night, is we need to get rid of that income cap and make sure that the 1,000 billionaires that are in this country who are not paying their fair share, they just need to pay 1 or 2% more in taxes. It's really quite simple. We can fully fund programs like that. We can solve the budget shortfall for Social Security by making sure our billionaires who use our infrastructure and our labor to to buy yachts and to pay corporate shareholder dividends. They can do more to help, and they should, because they made a whole lot of money off of our backs, and we should see the benefit of that. Another thing that we can do is we can bust up monopolies to bring down the cost of goods so that the money that comes in from Social Security goes a little farther. And then finally, what I would say is it's about time to strengthen and protect Medicare for all. It's time to strengthen and protect Medicare for all. And I propose passing Medicare for all so that everyone has access to affordable care, and that the government has the ability to negotiate for lower drug prices. This is something that happens in every developed country. Our government should also be able to negotiate more, capping insulin at $35 a bottle. And that was a small step. You know, there are steps that we can take to cap prices on inhalers and other types of medicine that folks need. So making sure corporations pay their fair share, especially those billionaires, lifting that income tax and strengthening programs that will bring prices down for regular consumers is one way that I will handle that.
Thank you. We are ready now for closing comments, and let's see. We started with Andrews. Let's start our closing comments with Bethany.
Sure.
3 minutes.
Just in closing, I want to say thank you all for holding this forum. I think a fair exchange of ideas is healthy and good for our democracy. I think that we have seeing all these younger candidates here in Missouri should be exciting. And I hope that gives you guys some energy. What we may lack in funding from big corporations, we have in heart and in good messaging. And I believe that I am a good candidate and I can deliver resources for Missouri's 3rd Congressional. There are ways that we can reach across the aisle and reach independent voters that don't pull them to one extreme or another. We can keep it simple. We can build up our infrastructure and build roads and bridges that connect people instead of a big wall that separates us or keeps us in. And so I believe that running on just really smart policies, infrastructure, making sure that we protect and expand our healthcare options. You know, we didn't even broach on the fact that Missouri families are experiencing really terrible consequences as a result of Roe being overturned. I'm hearing stories across the district of people not being able to access basic care. I had one constituent ask me if I knew where there was an OBGYN north of 70, and I asked a couple of doctors and I couldn't find an answer. And we should be alarmed by the rates of maternal mortality and healthcare access here, especially among Black women in this state. And finally, I'm running a campaign that brings all of Missouri together. So you don't have to agree with me on every issue. I still believe that, you know, that scientific method of solving problems with little chemistry, technology, and good old fashioned common sense and communication can do a lot to rebuild our broken democracy. When you see so much stratification and pull on both sides, you see more people want to, you know, a nice safe exit ramp off to the side of that. And I think I can provide that. I think with my experience in infrastructure, agriculture, and manufacturing, I am uniquely qualified for this role. So I humbly ask for your vote on August the 6th and then November the 5th. I believe, so my name is Bethany Mann. I'm the right man for the job.
Thank you, Bethany. Andrew?
Thank you. I want to start off by saying thank you all for welcoming me to this forum. I want to make it clear that right now, so right now, the outlook in this country is bleak because a lot of young people are not able to work and find good paying jobs. And the fact that 70% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck and 90% of Americans don't even have $1,000 in their savings account, that is really, really harmful to me because me as a person, I save. I think people should have the right to work to actually live. If we are letting corporations continue to pay their workers low wages, lower than minimum wage per hour, whereas the CEOs are making 30 to 50 times more than they're paying their employees. That does not sit well with me. And we really need to push and encourage more corporations to pay their fair share of taxes. If they pay their fair share wages to their employees, I also think it's time for them to bring back the penicillin system, because the loyal workers are complaining that people are leaving, they're transferring to other companies for new jobs. The workforce is in trouble right now. We should be able to do that. We should be able to address that and bring back the middle class system, because the middle class and working people class are responsible for 90% of our economy. And if we are paying well, we will be able to stimulate the economy and develop our country to a higher level. So thank you all so much for your time and listening to me and my message. Thank you so much.
Thank you, both of you. I really appreciate both of you being able to join us this afternoon, and wish you the best of luck in August and also in November. So thanks for coming. And
I need to ask Andrew, I don't have Andrew's address. Could you tell me your address right now and I will write it down?